All right, so the first one is Will Smith posted an emotional apology, and this was about the Oscar slap, and he says Chris Rock is not ready to speak with him. So I thought maybe the best way to kind of start this was to actually watch what he posted together, and then we can kind of give you a little bit of our thoughts because we have been covering this since it happened just a couple of months ago. So let's bring this on in.
Hmm.
That breath out sounded a little nervous.
Why didn't you apologize to Chris in your acceptance speech? Um, I was fogged out by that point. It's all fuzzy. I've reached.
Okay, so let's just talk about that super quick. So when this all transpired, Will Smith then of course won the award, and that was part of the question and that we were talking about. It's like, why was he allowed by the Oscars to still get up after he had assaulted someone? Blatantly just assaulted someone. So number one, the Oscars were like, why didn't they ask him to leave? Why wasn't he dragged off in handcuffs? Police were there, we found out. And so then he got up and he actually gave his speech. He accepted the award, and so that's what the question is driving at. So it's like, all that stuff happened. We're not going to talk about that, but why didn't you apologize to Chris at that moment? Because his acceptance speech was very emotional. If you remember, he was crying.
What do you think about his answer right there that he was just kind of blurred out? Like for me, it's I don't think that he was blurred out. I mean, he knew exactly what he did and who he did it to in the moment. I mean, but you're absolutely right. The fact that we were both shocked, just the fact that he was able just to continue and sit down and get
Yeah.
up, and it's insane what transpired.
Yeah,
But
police were asked after the assault occurred. They asked Chris Rock if he wanted to press charges right then. So had he said yes, I think that Will Smith would have been escorted out by the police. Now the fact that he still wasn't, just as a general kind of like what just happened, the fact that he was allowed to kind of go and sit back down, he was in the front row, and then there was different presenters that came up. I think it was P Diddy as one of them, and he's laughing and joking and and all this stuff, and not to say
and inserting
either
himself.
way. Yeah, I mean, look, guys, we're going from this is we're just curious about why some of these things didn't happen. We're like, well, is it because it's just Will Smith? If it was anyone else, because we're fans of Will Smith, we
I'm
love him,
I'm
but
a
didn't make it
huge fan of
appropriate.
I'm a huge fan of Will Smith, and let me lay that out right now. I'm a huge fan of Will Smith, and I still am. But this is I'm talking about the issue at hand right here, and I mean, holding accountable. I guess I don't
Yeah.
know,
So
but
anyway, let's keep
continue.
watching.
Reached out to Chris, and the message that came back is that he's not ready to talk, and when he is, he will reach out. Um, so I will.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a sec. So, he Will Smith already issued an apology to Chris Rock as well as of course the Oscars and everyone who in attendance and all that on his social media, right? So he did this pretty quickly after the incident. So he has already apologized. And now several months later, he's like, even though Chris Rock isn't ready to talk to me, I'm still issuing this additional apology. And my initial thought is, why are I'd be kind of pissed if I was Chris Rock. Why are you
It
putting this on the radar again?
it feels to me like I told you, when we were discussing a little bit of what we were going to cover on the show, it feels like bullying to me. It feels like he's bullying Chris Rock into, saying something on the record like it's okay. Will Smith is ready to move past
Right, trying
this.
to get a response. Is that what you're
Trying to get
saying?
trying to kind of force the issue on Chris. And I mean, Will Smith just said right there, he already told his people, got back to me and said he's not ready to talk. So he's trying to force, the issue. And um I don't know about this tactic, but again, let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah, and something that you and I kind of spoke about it, on this point is you were just saying you still find, at least at this point, what he's saying to be credible. We don't feel like Will Smith's
I
being
don't.
disingenuous,
Yeah, no, that's
right?
that's that's my as we continue, that's my general feeling about everything. I don't feel like Will Smith does anything disingenuous. Like we've seen a lot of interviews with him, we've watched a lot of footage together, and like before this happened, this is just the kind of guy he is. He makes apology videos, he's always doing a lot of self-reflection. And so I think that yeah, no, I think that he's being totally genuine in this, but that's not the point. That's not the point of how
Right,
he feels. This is, Chris was the victim in this case. So
right. All right, so let's go back.
Say to you, Chris, I apologize to you. My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. I want to apologize to Chris's mother. I saw an interview that Chris's mother did, and that was one of the things about that moment. I just didn't realize, and I wasn't thinking, but how many people got hurt in that moment. So I want to apologize to Chris's mother. I want to apologize to Chris's family, specifically Tony Rock. We had a great relationship. Tony Rock was my man. And this is probably irreparable. I spent the last 3 months.
Yeah, so let's talk really, really fast. There's a couple of things, and some of you are bringing up some interesting points in the comments.
yeah, keep your comments coming, guys. We're trying to get to them.
Yeah, so for example, on YouTube, so this apology is fake. He was partying the same night. So we did kind of address this after the fact on follow-up reports that we were doing, right? So again, not a great look because not only did he stay, he sat in the front row, he participated, he was laughing, he was being pleasant, all that stuff. After this thing had happened, that was just very awkward at best, but obviously it was a crime at worst. But in any case, afterwards, he's partying, he's dancing, he has his award and this and that. It's not a good look because, again, it's like, where's your head at?
Well, do you know that could be, also be, you don't know if he got that, if that was his advice, if that was the advice of Jada, who I think pulls a lot of strings. Just as far as like, just continue on with your night. You won your award. This is your night of celebration. Don't let Chris get on, don't let him bring you down. You're better than that. You shouldn't have done that. You feel bad, but just enjoy your night. We'll suffer the repercussions tomorrow. There will be, forgetting the fact that everybody has cell phones and is filming them getting jiggy with it in Miami on the floor with his stuff. Like, people remember, and that goes to my point that I said earlier in the stream. I don't think that he was just cloudy and forgot to apologize to Chris on stage, and because if that was the case, he would have made sure he did it the next day. It's just there's a lot of, I mean, he did give his little apology, but I mean, it wasn't
Yeah, I
it's not
don't
like he's
think.
doing now. And one
Right.
point to what he just said is, about his family and his mom and, his Chris Rock's brother, who's also a comedian, which is funny. Um, uh, I think that I'm afraid that people, when they see that, they're going to think that he is doing like kind of like a cheap ploy, like people are going to think that that aspect is funny. Like, oh, do you, like, you really care about his mom's, what he's saying? You're apologizing to mom because you're trying to get some points for apologizing to Chris Rock's mom and showing, getting that. I believe totally that's exactly how he feels and the kind of person that he is. I don't think that, again, I don't feel like any of this apology is put on. This is not the point, though.
Yeah, right. We have to, the point is about Chris Rock and trying to make it right, right? So, I
Is this
think
the way?
too.
Is this the way to go about it if you're truly trying to heal things?
Yeah, look, and not to, pick apart what he's saying because obviously there's an intent behind it. But for example, when he's saying I just kind of forgot, I was, kind of blinded in a cloudy space and all this, it's not that he forgot or that he just didn't have clarity on that. Maybe he should apologize. In fact, that he should immediately take ownership of it, that it was inappropriate because something in him snapped, psychologically. And there's been a lot of people kind of analyzing this on what was the build up and that this was it. This was the straw that broke the camel's back and that he didn't care. He knew that
Yeah,
millions of people were watching. He probably knew that he was going to get
because
arrested. And he
he's a
didn't
king of Hollywood.
care.
He's a king of Hollywood, you know.
Yeah, and maybe there's
He's not the top
entitlement
guy, but
there, right?
and that's the thing that, you know, it's like, oh, boo-hoo for celebrities and, you know, all that stuff. And I feel you, but it doesn't change the fact that psychologically there's a whole different kind of people that are out there that live completely different lifestyles that most of us can't even relate to, and that doesn't make them better than us, it doesn't make them worse than us. It just makes it different. And they're I feel like a lot of things are relative. You know, what breaks their heart is a lot different than what breaks our hearts. But it doesn't mean that they're not still people. They don't still feel things. Just their lives are totally different. Like when you're just being catered to and you're just surrounded by yes people, and everybody that's surrounded by you has a personal interest in you because they're making money from you in some way. So they just want to keep the train going. And I don't know.
Well,
I
and
think
to
I
play
think it's
devil's
tough.
advocate, though, I mean, you could also say, well, does he have really, course of conduct, and that he has a tendency of getting into fights? Yes, he, had a thing with like a photographer, press guy once, but typically this is not his mode of operation. But, take it out of this context, right? So take it out of a big spotlight. We're all watching and we're like, this is totally reprehensible. I mean, everyone can pretty much agree to that. But then there are people who will kind of go to examples of, maybe some drunk guy in a bar is harassing verbally your girl, and you get up and you're going to defend her and you punch him in his face, in a different scenario. Does it make it better or right? The answer is no. It's
No,
still
but
battery, it's still assault, but I think context matters a little
I
bit.
understand the emotion of it. You know what I mean? As a you know as a human that has a loved one that feels a way, like I understand that instinct. You know what I mean? Like I understand getting into fights and I understand getting pushed too far and all that stuff. That's not even so much my argument, because it's like when you do that, you own it and then you're accountable for your actions. Like if we were in a bar or something and I got in a fight with somebody and I threw a first punch and I went up and hit somebody, I would realize if I when I'm in handcuffs getting walked away, like, well, yeah, I mean, I punched the guy. You know what I mean? It's more about just the taking the responsibility and how nothing was done by security or anything else to protect Chris, to protect the other people that were in the audience.
Right.
What else could have
Right.
happened? Not to mention the fact that it disrupted a multi-million-dollar show that was live broadcast. There's
Yeah,
so many
or
different
some people
things.
are like, it was a big hoax. I know some of you in the chat are still saying this, right? This was just a big publicity stunt. I don't know what Will or Chris would have had to
To
gain from
gain.
this, because it's a pretty embarrassing thing at best for
And
Chris
if
in
you're going on
particular.
like a whole Illuminati trip, then I mean, I can't even ride with you on that. And not to say that the Illuminati doesn't exist or anything like that. I can't go with you on that journey. But I mean, if we're talking about, especially when we're talking about the actual legal ramifications or the consequences to somebody's career afterwards, if you've followed Will Smith on something more than a superficial. I've seen Independence Day. I've watched Fresh Prince a few times. I've heard Miami. I've heard, you know, all these songs, and you've watched interviews with him. This is how he's always been. He's never not
No,
been
and we're gonna talk about that in a second before we get off too far. Let's go back and let's watch a little bit more of his apology.
Replaying and understanding the nuances and the complexities of what happened in that moment. And I'm not going to try to unpack all of that right now, but I can say to all of you, there is no part of me that thinks that was the right way to behave in that moment.
I believe that.
There's no part of me that thinks that's the optimal way to handle a feeling of disrespect or insults.
Yeah.
After Jada rolled her eyes, did she tell you to do something?
I know this is
No.
a question we
It's
had.
like, I made a choice on my own from my own experiences.
But did he? But did he? Look, I'm gonna go
that might
against
be a
this a
little
little bit,
cap.
just because, we obviously from the limited points of views that we saw, nonetheless, he was laughing at the joke, and whether it just took a second to sink in or whatever, he laughed at the joke. He looks at Jada, and then she's very upset, and then he reacts. So if you're telling me that that had no impact on
Nothing
his
right.
decision, I'm not necessarily believing it.
Now, whether or not she said go up there and slap him, I don't
Right.
think that she did
Right.
that. But to say that that had no effect, like I don't want to get too much into it, but I definitely have some feelings on just, my own personal kind of feelings about Jada Smith and how their relationship is handled. Not that it's any of my business what they do with their
No,
relationship,
and a lot of
but
you
they
who
put it
have
out
followed,
there.
there's yes, there is some stuff about their relationship, and
I'm not trying to get into all the particulars of it, but they've always come across as the kind of couple to me that, that Will Smith takes a cue from Jada Smith. And that's always the imprint. That's the nicest possible way that I can kind of put it, that I care to put it on the show. But he takes a cue from her, and with all of his moves and whatever, and I think that um, that's the relationship that he likes to be in. That's the relationship that he chose to be in. It's none of our business to, as far as that's concerned, or what he should or shouldn't do. But I mean, for him to say that, it's not what it looked like to me, or just the history of anything that we've seen. But we were not sitting there.
yeah.
Is from my history with Chris, Jada had nothing to do with it. I'm sorry, babe. I'm going to say sorry to my kids and my family for the heat that I brought on all of us. To all my fellow nominees, this is a community. It's like I won because you voted for me, and it really breaks my heart
Yeah.
to have stolen and tarnished your moment.
You're definitely distracted from it, that's for sure.
I can still see Questlove's eyes. It happened on Questlove's award, and you know, it's like I'm sorry really isn't sufficient. What would you say to the people who
But I
looked up to
mean,
you?
in a way, sorry is not really sufficient, but obviously it is to a degree because that's what he's doing right now, right? So then what's the point of saying it and repeating the apology if it really is insufficient?
Yeah, no, and I mean, it did. He didn't mean to tarnish the movie, but I mean, if you are the producers of King Richard, you're pretty bummed out, because there's no way that nobody is watching that movie in the last few months that hasn't been like, oh man, is he gonna slap him? Or just something to that effect, or it's hurt the numbers of, it really did take away from the moment. But people get in the heat of the moment, and I appreciate that he apologized to Questlove and ruined his moment too. Like it, it was just it was just wrong. I mean, it was just wrong, just straight up wrong. But I
Well,
understand the
and
emotions and stuff behind it.
yeah, and then as far as some other stuff, as far as kind of more of an insight into Will Smith, he did an interview. This was released, David Letterman, I think it's on Netflix. Is that right? So we
Yeah.
were
Mhm.
watching this interview that was shot before the Oscars incident. But, Will Smith was just very vocal about just like, I've had these huge insecurities with, and doing this self-reflection on just feeling like I'm never good enough, or I can't provide, or I'm not the man. And so, again, I feel like even that provided a little insight into maybe his psychological makeup of there was something that kind of snapped, and that he needed to defend Jada, whether that was something with their relationship, he needed to show her, or he needed to show the world. But
Or
I think that played into it.
and then on both counts, maybe he felt that, that little joke, even though it was against Jada, was, a dig at him. And he talks a lot about, always been having troubles being referred to as like kind of like a soft rapper, or just, not hard,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
And maybe like, put on the spot with all those cameras, you're in the front row, and this guy's just, insulting your wife in front of a bunch of people. Like, maybe there's part of it that had less to do with Jada and more to do with him. Like, he felt that I don't know. There could be a million things that went on, in his head. And then I saw a comment that went by. You guys, we're trying to catch all of these comments, but we are broadcasting on 4 different platforms. So we're trying to get to all your comments you can. But somebody had made a comment that, the apology was as weak as the slap. And I've seen that a few times from people. And my thought on that is, I don't care if it hurt him, if it didn't. He went up there and tried to humiliate him on stage. He caused a huge disruption to the show, whether he drew blood, left a black eye or not. It was still
Yeah,
assault.
and it was humiliating. It was embarrassing. I mean, there's just no way. And look, in
And now
the sake of
he's getting called out again right now in this video. Like, where, I'm apologizing. Can't we move past this? I mean, what's the problem?
well, and also we've heard interviews that Chris Rock has done, right, with like Howard Stern and talking about how he was heavily bullied. And so I think that, as far as just being kind of in a vulnerable position, just because of your life experience, I don't know how he's dealing with this. But again, if I was on his side of things and then there was yet another video and now all this attention on him, and I don't know if he's still on his tour, but it's just kind of like, I wouldn't be too happy with this.
I mean, it's just, you're just always, it just, my whole thing is, if you're Chris Rock, you're going to be asked about this forever. This is part of now your legacy, like, no matter what. Like, and that's also to the people that think that, they did this for some kind of conspiracy. For what? Like, okay, Will Smith, maybe he gets that reputation. Like, if he was going for, I don't want to look weak anymore. Well, he's totally, contradicted that with all these apology videos and crying on stage and stuff. That totally crosses out the whole being hard by slapping some guy on stage. And then you got Chris Rock, who's the dude that got slapped by the softest rapper in the game. Now, again, I'm a fan of Will Smith and I like his music. I don't think he's a soft rapper. I'm just saying that's what people are saying. um I just, it's tough. And and people, we haven't even talked about Chris Rock's role. Like, did he deserve it, and all that kind of stuff. We've covered that at length on the videos. We have playlists. I'm sure I'll put that in the description if you want to follow our
Right.
coverage of this story.
Yeah, guys. So the last little piece of this, I'm not gonna play it. I just want to hit the last of your comments, and we'll move on to the next story. But the last question was just, what would you say to people who looked up to you before the slap and who have told you that you've let them down? And he just goes on to say, of course, like, I'm so sorry. That was never my intention. I know I let you down, and I look forward to basically kind of reversing the story. And then what was that piece at the very end that he says? And let me play that. So he does say something as far as the friendship with Chris Rock. Let me see if I can catch it.
Light and love and joy, shocking. So I would say to those people, I know it was confusing. I know it was shocking. But I promise you, I am deeply devoted and committed to putting light and love and joy into the world. And, if you hang on, I promise we'll be able to be friends again.
Okay, so I wouldn't necessarily take that as being directed specifically at Chris Rock. So maybe that was more just generally to the general public that's upset with him.
I'm going to refresh.
Okay. All right, guys. So let me go over to the comments here. Yeah. So I mean, what do you think? How you feeling? A part of me is wondering if this is part of Will Smith's process. So now, as he is going to just move on, because he has to move on, he can't do anything. He can't force, Chris Rock to respond to him. So maybe this was part of his process, so that now he feels comfortable doing his social media again and releasing
Yeah,
other types
no.
of content.
And
So
Will
maybe
Smith,
that
and
was
he
just
had to do so. And while I think that this is a bit of an unintentional bully kind of video, because it's putting pressure on Chris Rock to do something, Will Smith also has the right to continue on with his career. And you know what I mean? And if this is the way that he feels, because he's got in the same way that I feel like it's possible that after the whole thing happened, when he was partying later that night, his team was like, you got to move past this. And it happened, but don't let it ruin your night. Don't let it destroy your career. Jada's telling him, don't let this destroy your career. Make another apology if you feel like you need to, and get it out there, and you have to live your life. You can't. And that's the thing, and that's important for a lot of people. As humans, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And I think that we can let those mistakes define us, or we can learn from them, try to grow and move past it to the best we can. There's always going to be haters in your life, whether you are a celebrity, whether you're not, and it's your family and friends or people that you used to know. You're always going to have people that are supporting you and wishing for your downfall. And all you can do is just do the best with all the knowledge that you've gotten from your mistakes.